Hello, Bullpups. This is Blake Vargas, Superintendent here in Caney Valley. I want to talk with you a little bit about our upcoming bond on November 7th. First, we may take a step back briefly to begin discussing a little bit about how the district has handled maintenance overall. We're lucky that we've got the best department in the entire state that keeps us up and running. And we truly are doing our best to go through, but we definitely operate under a reactive versus a preventative nature, which is where we'd like to go to, meaning that when we have those systems go down, we have an issue that comes up, we react to it, begin to address the situation, hope that it doesn't require any type of cancellation or major impact on the school, and then move forward. Really what the bond begins to address is trying to get to a preventive nature, getting those things addressed before issues come up, and making sure that we're prioritizing as we move forward to address the needs of our students and community. Real quickly, we are coming out of an era. Our history of school funding since '09 has been devastating to schools. We're not the only one who's seen that impact, and unfortunately maintenance has been one of those things that we put on the back burner. That may do well for the first few years, but we are definitely seeing the effects of that overall as funding really began to impact that, and we prioritize keeping the classroom open, maintaining staff. But anytime you begin not to address some of those things, whether it be basic maintenance and things of concern, we do our best overall. But again, that's had a major impact as we've kind of moved forward. So it's important for the district to develop a plan, and that's exactly what the board directed us to kind of work through. And so we did partner with a leading organization, Train, as we went through. We put out an RFP process that began to look at multiple organizations, and Train was selected. They are one that's partnered with multiple communities and school districts and other actual, whether it be hospitals and government buildings as well across the state, to begin looking at efficiency. Their history overall was one of the reasons, as well as the products that they put out as well, that increase energy savings throughout. So what we found out in that facility audit overall was that there were a lot of items that came up. And despite a discussion about whether it would be appropriate to look at an entire new facility, we knew with feedback through the community and a community group that we form a special task force to kind of go through this, that an actual new building would be too much, we felt, for our taxpayers to bear at this time. And so we began to determine what is it that we have to have and that need to be able to keep our buildings up and running. And so we narrowed that list of items down. I believe it came in around the $7 million mark, and finalized that down to $4 million when we got to those needs. Now that number can be scary, and so it's always easy when you hear that. Obviously that's a large number as it goes through, but when it gets down to how does that affect me as a taxpayer, and that implications for the average homeowner, when you look at that median value here in Caney, that amounts to 16 cents a day, $5 a month, $60 a year. And again, that's not per individual in the household, that's per house. So for example, if I were looking at my wife and I, however you wanted to split that out, then basically that, yearly impact, if I were the median value there at 71,200 for the household, then you would look at that, whether that be 30 per individual. But again, that's per household, that's not per individual, just to kind of clarify. But those are always important whenever you see those numbers to come out. Like to make sure, and again, that's the kind of median value. I will have some updated info at the end of this presentation that kind of adds some more specifics as well. So out of that facility audit, what we know is that despite our best efforts, that many of our deferred maintenance backlog has created some inefficiencies. They're costly to operate, and that's obviously increases the risk of failure throughout. And so that's what the bond addresses, is those high need areas, those things that we also know as we do those improvements, we focused on improvements that are going to guarantee energy cost savings for us down the line. And so those are the improvements that we focused on, ones that we know that are going to basically put money back into the system that can be used in the classroom and for our students. So important things as we go through, and the impact of this is that we know that there are many areas that can tie in, and that the bond kind of potentially impacts all of those, whether it be faculty excellence, student learning in the classroom, policy and compliance needs, our relationship with the community. We're very blessed to be able to house many events, whether it be on the weekends or all throughout the summer, so that stewardship that we believe in as well, and then just meeting our bottom line when it comes to making sure that we operate within our financial means. And so all those kind of tie in. I would reiterate as we go through this, or like to point out that it's great to be able to pause throughout the video. I will do my best to kind of go through, be efficient as possible, but also not, I really don't want to read every single word because there's some great points where you can pause, kind of read through it, and then move on at your own pace. So some benefits of that high performance school: we know that having proper ventilation, lighting, being a green school, all those can impact the classroom. And so these improvements as we go through, especially when we talk about the HVAC units, the air quality, when we look at lighting as well, you can just walk down our hallways and despite our best efforts, you may see 3 or 4 different variations of lighting as we go through, and that's just simply that we react to that, replace when we can, and then move forward. But again, we've never been able to kind of update to a newer system that would really help us out overall. So some summary things. This is a great slide to or part of the video that you can pause and kind of begin to look at. Gives us our age, equipment age, and summary. So you can see 44 out of our 91 units are past their end of life. And so that's never a great spot to be in. And so those are the major things that this bond begins to address, whether it be our boilers, cooling towers. RTU represents our rooftop units, our split system water source heat pumps and heaters. But again, that's something that as we begin to look through that we're trying to address to make sure that we remain efficient and keep open for our students and our community. So a little overview of the high school. Again, that was the last time that a bond was actually passed, was back in the 70s when this building was built. So again, we're all original basically when we look at many of our items. We've got our still single pane windows that are very inefficient. You can come up on a rainy day and see that kind of go through despite our best efforts to seal them and keep them recocked as we go through. We do see issues with those. Our original T12 fluorescent lights, which are very energy inefficient, and so that's something that we'd like to update with the newer LEDs so we can begin to see some savings. Our heating and cooling systems as well, and then basically some energy controls to make sure that we can maintain that. So an aerial overview that kind of shows you those items that will be addressed. Red are those areas that are going to be addressed that are past their end of life. Green are our good systems. We've been able to do a pretty decent job with the high school actually over the years, and that's simply because we've been able to replace as those begin to fail. And then we have a couple that are ending their near of life, their end of service life, but we're gonna be okay with those, we believe. Through that scope of work, one thing that we realize is that we have the ability to address a couple of minor items that have been needing to be done for a while. One of those is the exhaust in the locker rooms. If you're a former athlete or have been in there, you know that we need to ventilate that better, and then also adding cooling to those locker rooms. The time has come for us to be able to address that need for our students and for their performance as well. So Lincoln, some of the same issues that are there when we talk about lighting. Again, those ones that honestly aren't even manufactured anymore. They're all in warehouses and in big stockpiles. But when those go out, we have to go to the T8, which are the newer ones, and we'd actually like to go ahead and just get off of those and get to a newer LED for efficiency as we go through. Our big major system that we know are our boilers at the elementary. Unfortunately, it is extremely efficient when you look at the operating because of that heating and cooling through our boiler system. But we know that those loops that are tied in are ones that both of those systems are well past their end of life and something that we need to address. The great thing with the efficiency is that when it's up and running, it's good, but when it's down, that impacts the entire building because of the way the loops are. And so you can get a quick visual here when you look at our systems, and red would be those that are past service life or ones that we've developed issues with. Yellow would be those that are nearing the end, and then green would be areas that are okay. So you can see at the elementary some high area need of concern as it goes through. This is the individual units as we begin to look at that numbering. So if you want to pause there, a good point in the video to begin looking at those and the ones we'll actually address. So the actual boiler plant, end-of-life water source heat pumps and items that'll be on that upgrade. And then replacing that split loop, making it one will increase that efficiency. It's one that we're able to do. We also know through our audit that we initially had installed a non-pressurized pipe, which is beginning to develop leaks. We had our first major one. Luckily for us, it was in the gym where no students were around. But again, our biggest fear is that developing a leak during the classroom day and actually affecting one of the classrooms. Heaven forbid that be when students are in there. But again, that's something, an area that we know is a major concern that we want to address within the Bond4Bullpups that's coming up in November. Good point to pause in the video. This gives a lot of information and some information on the side as far as what those abbreviations mean. RTU, rooftop unit, mansard roof, commonly referred to as the metal fascia at the high school, EOL, end of life units, and then WSHP, water source, not water horse, water source heat pumps. So some items there. Good point to pause, kind of look through the scope of that as it goes through. So the main thing that differentiates this from other bonds is that we are going through the route with an energy service company organization to train. You have that one individual that's responsible. The great thing with this is that there are guaranteed savings that are within these projects. We know that we're going to see, I think on lighting, it was over $20,000 per year annually when we talk about the impact of the lights overall when this project is done. If those savings are not seen, then Train has to make up that difference. And so that's one route. When we look at that, it's a Kansas statute that's specifically to Kansas, and we're lucky with that. But this bond is built around and going through that ESCO. That way we guarantee that the improvements we're making are actually going to impact and increase dollars in the long run. The other partner that we're working with is Piper Joffrey. They're the leading company here in Kansas and honestly throughout the nation as well, their impact. But they'll be helping ensure that once that money's taken, that's done at the right time, that we're able to get that at its lowest point as possible as we begin to monitor that. And as you can look over the last few years, this is a good time if we have to do this project to be able to do it. And so we see that those rates are very low, that we've seen some great things, and we estimate that hopefully we'll be able to get that at a good point if the bond were to pass. So some financing, the way that was chosen with the board, they looked at multiple options, but they felt like a 12-year repayment plan would be the best, and the average interest rate is somewhere around 2.8 to 3% as it goes through. The reason that a bond was chosen, and again, this is kind of the point that I believe is kind of important that I know the board would like to convey, is that the project itself as it goes through will more than likely be done one way or another. And one route has us as a local entity within the school trying to pay for that, whether it be through our current capital mill, general mill, trying to find a way to do that out of our budget that we currently have, which is very, very difficult. The alternative route, and the reason I believe that the bond was chosen by the district overall, was that $520,000 over the life of this bond is paid for by individuals not in Caney School District. And so it was kind of a no-brainer that if we're going to have to do this project one way or another, the board felt like it makes most sense to handle it with a bond and have that amount paid for by other individuals rather than local taxpayers. Currently, we don't have a bond againstment since the 70s, since we've had any type of bond and interest levy. And the projected increase would be that 7.25 mils, which I spoke a little bit. So for the average taxpayer, 16 cents a day, $5 a month, $60 a year. So those are those numbers that you see kind of as it goes through. A good point to pause here if you do want to look at that. There's some different impacts on the level of home, whether it be higher or lower. And again, that's not a per cost impact. Again, per person impact per se. That is actually again per household. So again, that kind of gives you some values with that. We'll have other detailed financial information at our community meeting that'll be coming up on October 10th, and I'll provide that information here in just a minute. So again, to kind of summarize, that gives a good sheet overall of some of the improvements that are going on. Again, the lighting, HVAC, a lot of things that have to do with our windows and the inefficiencies, some electrical stuff, our mansard roof, but a lot of items. Again, a good point to kind of pause and read through that. Important dates to remember: make sure you register to vote. That's coming up very, very quick. Some advance voting dates: the election day, November 7th. And then I'd invite everyone, Tuesday, October 10th, please come out from 5 to 7. We will have that community meeting, and we're looking forward, and we will have representatives from Train and Piper Joffrey there. Finally, Some common questions came up during our first meeting, so a good point to pause and read through some of those. And then last but not least, please make sure you come to me with questions and concerns. I'm always available, and I appreciate your support as we finalize and work toward this project. Have a good day.